Hello, welcome to Feasting on the Word for this week. It is December the 18th, 2024, our fourth week in Advent, and next week, Feasting on the Word is on Christmas Day itself. I hope to have something to record. I've recorded for you so that on Christmas Day, if you're trying to center yourself spiritually, you'll have something there on Christmas Day, probably a little bit of the birth story itself, even though we heard that on Christmas Eve, just to kind of also have that on Christmas Day. So today's also has that tone of the season to it, and I hope that's something that you were looking for. This is coming out of Matthew's Gospel, which typically we hear mostly from Luke's Gospel. Feasting on the Word is an ancient discipline. It really links us into something that the church has done since its inception, which is centering ourselves on God's inspired Word, but doing it in a really manageable way, or doing it so we're not overwhelmed and can really start to appreciate more what comes through God's inspired Word. How do we do that? We take a really small passage of Scripture and we hear it repeatedly. We hear it multiple times in a short period of time, so we really can kind of chew on all it says. Hence, it's linked to feasting on the Word. It's like the first time we hear it, we take a bite, and the second time we hear it, we kind of chew on it, and the third time we hear it, we really begin to kind of savor its flavor, to appreciate what it says. And the fourth time, we swallow it, we incorporate it into our lives. I use 4 different translations as a way of just updating this a little bit. So I use the New Revised Standard, then the Message, the Contemporary English, and finally conclude with the New International Version. There is silence interspersed between those readings, 1 minute between the first and second reading, another minute following the second reading, a longer period of 3 minutes following the third reading, and again we conclude with the fourth and final reading. The longer period of silence is intended as an opportunity for us to turn to God in prayer and conversation, taking this passage that we have heard these 3 times and uplifting to God where it is for us, what it's saying to us, what it's communicating to us, how it's inspiring us or encouraging us or even confusing us as it could be. I like to have something to write with and something to write on nearby so I can write down my impressions through the first 3 readings and use that as the material for my conversation, my prayer to God during that longer period of silence. Let's jump into the discipline. Again, this is coming out of Matthew's Gospel. This is Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 8, starting with the New Revised Standard. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who's been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star in the east and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." Our second reading of Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 8 from the Message. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem village, Judah territory, this was during Herod's kingship, a band of scholars arrived in Jerusalem from the east. They asked around, "Where can we find and pay homage to the newborn king of the Jews? We observed a star in the eastern sky that signaled his birth. We're on pilgrimage to worship him." When word of their inquiry got to Herod, he was terrified, and not Herod alone, but most of Jerusalem as well. Herod lost no time. He gathered all the high priests and religion scholars in the city together and asked, "Where is the Messiah supposed to be born?" They told him, "Bethlehem, Judah territory." The prophet Micah wrote it plainly. "It's you, Bethlehem, in Judah's land, no longer bringing up the rear. From you will come the leader who will shepherd, rule my people, my Israel." Herod then arranged a secret meeting with the scholars from the east. Pretending to be as devout as they were, he got them to tell him exactly when the birth announcement star appeared. Then they told him the prophecy about Bethlehem and said, "Go find this child. Leave no stone unturned. As soon as you find him, send word, and I'll join you at once in your worship." Our third reading of Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 8 from the Contemporary English Version, with our longer period of 3 minutes of silence to follow. When Jesus was born in the village of Bethlehem in Judea, Herod was king. During this time, some wise men from the east came to Jerusalem and said, "Where is the child born to be king of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard about this, he was worried, and so was everyone else in Jerusalem. Herod brought together the chief priests and the teachers of the law of Moses and asked them, "Where will the Messiah be born?" They told him, "He will be born in Bethlehem, just as the prophet wrote, 'Bethlehem in the land of Judea, you are very important among the towns of Judea, for from your town will come a leader who will be like a shepherd for my people Israel.'" Herod secretly called in the wise men and asked them when they had first seen the star. He told them, "Go to Bethlehem and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, let me know. I also want to go and worship him." Our fourth and final reading of Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 8 from the New International Version. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who's been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." This is the inspired word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.